Youth Restiveness on our mind and the quest for solution. Well, this is Violence Free World. My name is Ikpe. Welcome to another edition. And we have a very special guest in the house today. His name is Godwin Obaseki, His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Edo State. We'll be right back after this special report.
The year 2020 could pass as one of the most dramatic in human history, particularly for the deluge of high-octave events that characterized it. Nigeria, like the rest of the world, came under the weight of the COVID-19 pandemic with unprecedented consequences. Interestingly, just as major traces of COVID-19 were fading, the End SARS protest sparked up with a violent coloration, leaving in its wake looting, death, loss of business hours, and wanton destruction of properties, both public and private.
Sergeant, risk us! Carry what you think, brother!
It is perhaps much more interesting to note that a threat to embark on a national industrial action by the organized labor in Nigeria, anchored on a hike in electricity tariffs and pump price of petroleum products, remained unresolved. In the interim, efforts to restore normalcy ensued on multiple fronts, the most notable of which is the deep dives embarked upon by the Nigeria Governors Forum. Some of the events at least succeeded in bringing to the fore the disconnect between the nation's leadership and youth across the country. Youth in the country protested manifest economic neglect, unemployment, a poor learning environment, and the absence of basic health care, among many other issues plaguing the country. It is instructive to note that the End SARS protest elicited a prompt response from the leadership.
In my state, I went out to meet them and I told them what I'm saying to you here, that look, what you're doing, I'm 100% in support of. But you've made your point. The president have heard you. We as governors, we went to the president to tell him that, look, sir, time to talk to your children, and not a fellow Nigerian speech, father to children speech. I've heard you. You've made your point. Now it's time for you to return home.
The 5-point demand by the End SARS protesters had been acceded to with efforts in place to meet the demands, yet the deficit of trust continues to undermine the pronouncements and the efforts of state governments.
For us in Edo State, End SARS was not a surprise. We knew that if we did not challenge the political status quo and get more participation and more involvement, particularly by younger people and women, in the political process, it was just a time bomb waiting to happen.
The burden of rebuilding confidence seems to hang heavily on the shoulders of the Nigeria Governors Forum, NGF, which as a body is increasingly proving to be a very dependable arbiter.
The forum calls for comprehensive and robust reforms in the police force.
It is still to the credit of the NGF that considerable amounts of palliatives and healthcare packages were gotten from several international donor agencies, CACOVID, and the federal government. Many may also not remember that the NGF negotiated and ensured that a truce between organized labor and the government was achieved. End SARS protests particularly may have put the forum and the individual governors of the 36 states across the country on auto drive as they assiduously worked to win the confidence of the people. But the impatience on the side of the people has remained its bane.
Welcome back. This is Violence Free World, and we have a special guest in the house, His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Edo State. Excellency, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Khalid.
Excellency, 2020 was quite a very remarkable year. Two things particularly defined that year, for me at least, which is NSAS and COVID-19. As NSAS approached, I was wondering what went around in your mind, because shortly after, we saw you respond with a summit that seemed like it's something that you've been planning for a very, very long time. Excellency, how did this play out to you, and then tell me about your response?
For us in Edo State, NSAS was not a surprise, because the issues that we dealt with during my elections were issues that are very fundamental and germane to any nation, which is one of governance, where the patrimony of a country should not be exclusively decided by a very few. And so for us in Edo, we knew that if we did not challenge the political status quo and get more participation and more involvement, particularly by younger people and women, in the political process, it was just a time bomb waiting to happen. Where in a democracy, you must have a system where the majority of people feel that they are being heard, that their views count, that they are affecting and influencing the policies and decisions that affect them. So participation is key. And most young people in this country don't feel that they are participating in the political process or in the governance system. And so you hear them talk about they, the use of they will not allow us. And you ask, who is they? It should be about us. And so the issues that culminated in the NSAS crisis for us was one of participation and involvement by a large segment of the society in the way the society is being governed. Because if they felt they were being listened to and they were being heard, the issues of violence and brutality and police brutality had been lingering for years. But it never became topical. It was not an issue, even when resolutions are passed in various parliaments, that people had a system or a method of resolving.
In other words, you felt that that protest was justified?
It's not a question of being justified or not. It's more like that it was the culmination of a process of people feeling that they needed to be heard, and they thought they had run out of options.
Excellency, even though a 5-point demand was put forward and acceded to by the federal government immediately, yet the circumstances actually that led to the NSAS are still very much prevalent today. Things bordering on unemployment, injustice, impoverishment, and all sorts. Now, for a lot of people, they feel this implied some sort of vote of no confidence on the present crop of leadership. Do you share in that view too, even though you're a governor yourself too, but you have your...
I think we are all culpable. The governed and those who govern. It has to be a shared responsibility. You cannot heap the blame totally on any segment, because the problems we're dealing with, the challenges, have been a long time coming. They didn't just start today. For me, fundamentally, it's about a weakening state structure where so much has been centralized. You know, like economic opportunities, security, these things that affect you in your everyday life seem to be centralized for a long time. And with COVID, we just have realized that they just don't have the resources to carry on the responsibilities they've always pretended to. So we just all need to sit down and do a reality check. For the young people who I believe have been shortchanged, they didn't receive the quality of education we got, and therefore do not have the spread of opportunities we have. In Edo State, we're working hard at that. We're doing two things. First, to go back to the foundations and reenact our education system and begin to retrain children at an early age to live in a much more competitive and digital world. For those who have fallen through the cracks, who have finished school, we are now trying to reinculcate work vocations in them.
Excellency, the role that people actually play, it's very key to assuaging the young people, particularly here. Now, we're looking at inclusiveness. All of these things that you've said, do you have any special plan to ensure that this demographic, the youth, are particularly involved with executing these things, just so they feel that it is our thing together that we're doing?
I've said, for me, in Edo, the second term, my cabinet has to be dominated by youth and young people, so that they also have insights into governance. They begin to see things themselves. They have hands-on experience, and they can tell their friends and colleagues what the reality of governance is. They must know. Also, they bring in special skills. They bring in, a totally different mindset into how things should be done. It's their world. It's the future. It's a youth world. So we need to get them more involved, to use tools like technology, which they're a lot more comfortable with, to organize society. That's what we're doing in Edo State.
Okay, Excellency, that protest brought forth some sort of structural deficiency, or revealed, so to speak, that speaks to even the issue of state police, community police, and the rest. But that will be when we return from this break. You're still watching Violence Free World. We'll be right back after this time out. Welcome back. This is Violence Free World, and we have a special guest in the house, His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki. Excellency, like we were saying before we went on that break, the NSAS protest brought forth, or revealed, rather, structural deficiencies, things bordering on the strength of policing in Nigeria, even the armed forces generally. Now, is this not supposed to have spurred us more into actualizing this issue of state police once and for all?
Well, like I said, there's usually no perfect systems. Most systems evolve. Clearly, Nigeria has become too large and sophisticated to have one central policing system. And I believe the authorities also have realized that. We are a federation, and there are several federating units. We have local governments, we have states, and we have the federal government. And I believe that security, as important as it is, should also be aligned to that structure. You know, you should have security people who are in charge of security at the local government level, people who are in charge at the state level, and people who are in charge at the federal level. Should be the same institutions. It might not be that efficient, but they must be related, and there must be checks and balances on each of them. That's in the works. Yes, NSAS and the NSAS protests have brought that to the light that one central policing system may not just be adequate. That people must feel that they are involved in their security.
Security-wise now, Excellency, now things seem to be getting a lot worse as far as security for the people. Violence is everywhere, has become a very, very major currency here now. To the extent that some of your colleagues are listening to Governor Otum and Governor Ishaku of Benue and Taraba respectively say, maybe this is a time for us to license private individuals to begin to carry guns. And in a way, Governor Bala of Bauchi State also said it is justified that the headsmen carry AK-47, even though he says in a figurative way, though, so they can protect themselves. Do you align with this thought? Is it not premature for us to begin to carry guns to defend ourselves?
Well, I don't believe that you should deploy violence to deal with violence, because you just could result into anarchy. The challenge with security today is the proliferation of arms, light arms, across the country and also across the sub-region. So if you now say we should bring in more arms to deal with this challenge, it doesn't sound logical to me that you should bring more arms to deal, to override the arms you have, already in people's hands. I think what we should be really thinking of is trying to disarm, people who shouldn't really be in possession of arms, and try to have strong institutions, strong security institutions to make people feel safe, people feel individually safe, not each person trying to, be like their own government.
Now, Excellency, ethnic profiling has come so much in the mix as we try to find solutions to the challenge of violence in our country. What comes to mind, usually it's Fulani headsmen each time there's an attack somewhere in the bush, here and there. And I don't think this is the way to go. Or do you think differently?
Clearly, I think it's wrong for you to profile crime. Crime is crime, and it should not be politicized or ethnicized. The people who you're trying to, you're trying to categorize as criminals, they've always lived in peace with the communities they found themselves. There's really no community in this country you don't have find people, headsmen, doing their business of rearing cattle, So you should rather than trying to generalize, we should step back and ask ourselves what has gone wrong. In Edo, you have 2-3 generations of Hausa Fulanis that have lived there. There are areas they live, and they clearly are not criminals. I mean, they're doing their legitimate business. They bring in tomatoes, they bring in onions, they bring in a lot of food stuff and cattle. So they are not the ones committing the crimes. Yet on the back of their trade of husbanding cattle, bandits have taken over. They are also victims, just like the rest of society. When I spoke with the Sariki Fulani and his the leadership.
The one in Edo State?
In Edo State. Okay. And he told me we had to clear the room. And he said, look, we are as much victims as you guys are. Because these bandits, attack us. And they threaten us. Because we speak the same language we don't speak. And in cases where we have reported, we've not been given protection. They cited the case of Sariki Fulani in Okene, who was slaughtered with his 2 wives because he gave information relating to some of these bandits. So we should not ethnicize and politicize the crimes that we're dealing with in Nigeria.
Governor Obaseki, in Edo State, or just say in the Niger Delta region, something happened in the reigns of Jonathan, or Yaradua rather, and amnesty was applied, and it seemed like it had worked. Some people will say the peace you will enjoy today is cosmetic, and it's not real, and it's more or less like sitting on a time bomb. But some people are thinking that actually worked, and that measure should also be applied to bandits in the Northwest, or bandits generally. And maybe we just may be able to begin to experience the kind of calm that you have in the Niger Delta today. Do you think that is a solution that can fly?
I think the amnesty that worked was based on disarmament. That a lot of the armed militants were encouraged to surrender their arms. And in any peacekeeping efforts, in any program to seek for peace, that's the first thing you want to do. So yes, if it is possible to appeal to a lot of the arms-bearing, these are bandits, these are criminals, to come and hand over their weapons, then it will work. But note, the Niger Delta militants were not criminals. And most of them are Nigerians. What you have today is slightly different. The Sahel has been destabilized for the better part of the last 2 decades. And there's been quite a bit of movement from outside the country into Nigeria. So quite a lot of the bandits may not be Nigerian residents or Nigerians. So it will be a tall order to ask them to come and disarm, and when you disarm, then what next? It is possible to disarm some of the cattle rearers who are holding arms for their own individual protection if you take them into proper ranches and settle them and continue to sustain their economic livelihoods. It is possible to disarm those ones.
Okay, Excellency, as we wind down, let me ask this question, something I call corporate conspiracy. By that I mean people who should be providing solution, people who should represent solution, now turn out becoming complicit in the adversity that we face. In Zamfara State today, a few chiefs have been sanctioned or able to remove outrightly. This is business, Excellency. This is business. And why would they ever want it to stop?
I think we should be careful. Because when information is banded like this, and people in leadership positions are portrayed as if they were the instigators of the crisis, it doesn't help. Even if you have these situations, they are exceptional. They are not the norm. They are not, what happens on a daily basis. Like I said, we should not take our eyes off the ball. What is happening in Nigeria today is one in which the structure we have operated for the last 4 decades has now expired, where the country waits, sits down, produces crude petroleum, the states, the local governments at the end of the month all head towards the center and collect their share. And so everybody sits back and nobody produces. And we've not been able to expand the economy and create opportunities for the rising population we have. That is the bottom of the crisis we're having. So as leaders, we must now understand it's time to open up. There's going to be a bit of pain, but this is a time to open up. We have no business importing at the level we're supporting. We have no business not providing the quality of training and education to the young men and women of this country so that they can be self-confident and do things for themselves. In Edo State, before I came in, I mean, it was a vogue to travel. At one point, you had 30,000 young men and women in Libya waiting to cross the Mediterranean into Europe. Why? Where can be better than home? So it's the responsibility of leaders to make home home, to provide for their people what we have. We are blessed. We have abundant resources in this country. There's nothing you want to do that you cannot. If one man, with the cash flows he has, is able to build a refinery bigger than what we have, the government can put together. If private individuals could do what they're doing, then the state has no excuse.
In wrapping up your thoughts on that, Excellency, do you believe this reality exists?
We are here. This is where we are. Post-COVID, this is our reality. So let's just understand that it's not going to be easy. The problems are not going to disappear. There's no magic wand. Leaders must now fold their arms. We have to make difficult decisions. We have to let go a lot of our luxury, and we now have to identify with our people, and together we can pull ourselves out of the morass.
Finally, Excellency, to the many young people watching you right now, because this is about them, what would be a word of advice to them, knowing that a lot of them see people who are non-violent people now suddenly becoming celebrities, being made chiefs, being venerated here and there? What would be your advice to them? Is that the way to go?
Well, for my advice for young people is that, look, you know what? We're where we are. We can't turn back the time. We just need to understand what has brought us here and understand that bringing down the house, bringing down the society will not help us. We are going to be worse off. It's to sit back and now get involved and insist, just like we've done in Edo State, that you are on the table discussing your future. You have a right to. But like they say in America, you can't change City Hall from outside of City Hall. You must be in. You must participate. Let's go out there, organize ourselves, ensure that at the local government levels, at the state level, insist that your voices be heard. And anyone, you have the numbers. And anyone who doesn't listen to you will not come back to power. We've done it in Edo State, we can do it in Nigeria.
Well, Governor Obaseki, I think that's a very, very good point to anchor it. Well, I've been speaking with the Executive Governor of Edo State, His Excellency, Godwin Obaseki. Excellency, once again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, this is Violence Free World. Hope to see you same time next week. Until then, please remember to remain on the road to a violence-free Nigeria. My name is Kali Ikpe.